It's one of these strange little parables and strange little happenings that the Bible records that Jesus is part of. This one is yet another dinner. If you haven't figured it out yet, Jesus, all through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not so much in John, but those other three, he seems to be at dinner with people quite a lot. Matter of fact, it happens in Luke the most, and it becomes an important part of the very gospel. Strange part is there's always a point that's being made when he is at one of these. Should we be surprised? Of course not, because there is, of course, amongst us still the Holy Supper, to which he himself then invites. But let me not get too far ahead of myself here. But how many of you still remember etiquette columns in the newspaper? Let me start somewhere else first. How many of you remember newspapers? I see fewer and fewer. I mean, there used to be the ill-kept car going by my road every morning, and was no muffler whatsoever, and it was like 4 in the morning, and he would throw newspapers. He doesn't come around anymore. Not even with a new car. He does nobody. Here you are. But you remember the etiquette columns, right? Did you read them? Did you used to read them a lot? Let's see what whoever was the good writers for them were writing those days. I'm not sure. Those of you who have shifted to internet hard, are they still writing somewhere on the internet? Oh, that's awful. Well, at least it doesn't get delivered with noisy mufflers. But,
Emily Post.
Shouldn't she be like 105 by now?
So is there
She handed it over to somebody, I guess. So these things get inherited. What can we say? But there is etiquette, and every culture has it. Ours is just a little more loose, and in 2016 it's really loose, And for that matter, dinner parties, as much as we all like to design our houses so that we can give them, that they happen better at restaurants where everyone is, where everyone can relax because you don't have to slave over the food. These kind of things. But in the days of Jesus, questions of who gets to eat, who gets to be invited, where are you invited and where are you not welcome? What do you do at table? What don't you do at table? What do you do to prepare for table? What do you do for your guests to prepare for table? And here we go, we have somebody wash people's feet so they can clean themselves up. We have somebody who stands by a closet and said, you're looking pretty ragged and dusty, let me give you a clean coat to wear. These kind of things all happen. Does it surprise anyone that there's a real strict rule where everybody gets to sit? No, of course not. Of course, there's a rule with whom you're supposed to eat, correct? Of course there is. Why wouldn't there be? Why shouldn't there be a rule on the order and rank in which one comes to the table and all these kind of good things? And so this is all in there, and it's kind of hidden, These folks never invited somebody that couldn't invite them back, by the way. Just let that sink in for a moment. You never invited somebody who did not somehow invite you back. And if you invited somebody like Jesus, you had expectations when you invited. Of course, you know what that then does, right? The people you know are people like yourself. All right, well, that hasn't quite ended, to be very honest, but here you are. We're still here. Now, you need to kind of think about this a little bit harder. If inviting people only like yourself is what you do, and somebody in the crowd shouts, "Blessed is he who is invited to the kingdom of God, to the feast at the kingdom of God." It doesn't happen where we read, but a couple of verses down. You have to think. If God throws it, think this through with me. If you invite people that pretty much are like yourself, only, and you don't invite people who are below you in the caste, who does God invite? Think about it.
Everybody.
I mean, it's got to be pretty darn lonely. You have no one to invite who can invite you back, can they? I mean, you're supposed to put on the same dog that the last guy did. You know? Or a bit better. I mean, they had a little bit of game going there, too. You know, there was a little bit of one-upsmanship. You invited me and served me, you know, barbecue brisket. Huh? Man, what I need to do is do smoked salmon or something like that. You know, I gotta one-up you. If you're God, who do you invite who can do that? Let that think in for a moment. There's a simple answer here. When God invites to the kingdom, to the feast, at the wedding feast of the kingdom, God will be inviting people who cannot So, even if you are blessed with kabillions, and probably could put on the dog for millions one nice day, if you wanted to, you would not be able to.
Be done too.
Yeah, exactly. You know, those who God invites are invited, and when God looks at them, there is no division amongst them. There can't be. When God invites, there is, you know, no repaying. There is no tit for tat that can go on. You know, it must be lonely to be God, I sometimes think, and maybe that is why God chose to have you and I as folks that sit at the foot of His table. But somehow everyone is called, through baptism, to this table, to this kingdom, to eat at the feast of the kingdom of God, to respond to the very invitation that the prophet Isaiah spoke. Come, eat and drink. Come, it'll cost you nothing. And we come to the altar of God, knowing that here is offered something that is not repayable. And that's the point. And it's given by the grace and the love of God. And in that invitation, I want you near. The invitation that is extended through the church and through the baptism through which we become part of God's house. There is kept our dignity as human beings. Realize that God is the keeper and guarantor of the dignity of human beings, large and small, rich and poor, great and insignificant. You know, the rest of humanity may be on television and us not. Okay? They may also be looked at as great and important and even as good and rightly admired. It means nothing. Their dignity is in the heart of God. The poor man on the corner, his dignity is in the heart of God. The question is, and you know I have to ask it, you see his dignity? It's a challenge that we know we have as we pass people who by the conventions and the habits of our society are seen as less, nonetheless share the same dignity that God has bestowed on you. And God the Almighty, is pleased to invite to his table even those who are way below him. Should you do any less, knowing that in God's eyes you have the same dignity as everyone else? God's honor is shown even in the humility of Jesus, who came to visit us and visits us in baptism and in the Holy Eucharist, to remind us whose we are, who made us, and who is the keeper. Who is the keeper of our spirits, our dignity, and our being. It's kept safe in heaven for us. This is what led St. Paul to write in Romans 3. Is anyone here alive who can boast on their own accord that they are important? The answer is, there is no boasting. It is excluded. We are the recipients of a righteousness not our own. It is said that when Martin Luther died, he died with the words, "We are all beggars, of this I am certain." It is true. We're all beggars. Then again, so was Lazarus, who sat in low places, very low places, but was placed in the bosom of Abraham, was lifted high. This is how the dignity is kept in heaven for you. Even the least of us, to you is promised a place. Will you promise that place to others?